stellar blade like that. Hey, middle-aged gamers! Wow, we started really fast today. I guess really late because I know it is 18 minutes past the start time, but lots of stuff going on today. Adam's going to be talking about one of his favorite franchises or their next game, Sanguis. Then we're talking about Carmageddon Rogue Shift, which again, if you're me and you watch a lot of Instagram or Facebook, you would have seen adverts for this popping up over social media, and it looks really cool. Again, if you're a middle-aged gamer, you would be aware of Carmageddon way back in the 90s. Adam will fill you in there. We're also going to be talking about a game, Soul Shogunate. And I'll let Adam describe that. And another game, Godslayer, which is another game Adam was telling me about that I've seen again all over social media, especially with the line like Avatar, The Last Airbender. Today's questions towards the end of the show. Again, keep these in mind. Put your answers down in the comments. Send us an email. What tiny design choice that secretly decides if you keep playing a game or quit? And the second question being, which sequels are significantly more difficult than the first title? And that's it for today. But Adam, start us off wherever you want to start.
All right, I'll start us off with Sanguis because I'm super excited. That was probably I've known about this for a really long time. So, but it was probably like, I'm really glad that it's finally coming out. So anyway, this is made by Lightbulb Crew. They are the makers of Othercide and Nova Hearts, if you played that one. And it has some similarities with both, much closer to Othercide though, because Othercide is a tactical RPG or strategy RPG, depending on the terminology you like to use. And Nova Hearts is a bit more of a kind of like, you have the side-by-side kind of battling thing. But anyway, if you've played Othercide, this is going to feel very, very familiar. I'm sure a lot of people are probably even wondering, is this a sequel to Othercide, or is this at least set in the same world? I don't believe it is. I think it's its own thing, but the gameplay, the style, the black and white with red, it's going to look and feel very, very familiar. I was lucky enough to do a playtest of it like back before. And now they're opening up another they have an open playtest, which you can do you can sign up for in Steam. You can't just go in and playtest it right now, but you can sign up for it. And then when they do their next playtest, anybody who wants to should be able to get in there. So that's really cool. So anyway, again, the game is Sanguis. It is an SRPG or TRPG, depending on your terminology, as I said, where you have a big map. It's on a grid, and you move your units around and, get behind people. You can attack from behind, from the side. You have various obstacles and various things in the environment that you can use to your advantage, such as, blowing up these sacks of blood or whatever. And in it, very similar to Othercide, you are going to be taking control of characters that are of various archetypes. Now, they are different from Othercide. In Othercide, you had one daughter was kind of a swordswoman. One was a shield maiden, and one was a gunner. So those were the three that you had there. And this one, they're a little bit different. Their weapons are kind of built into their arms, kind of Samus style, but they're all scraggly and whatnot. Here you have one that's got like basically a big blade, one that's got kind of this sickle-shaped staff kind of looking thing, and one that has kind of this split kind of design, like what you might see on the energy swords in Halo. But they seem to fill similar roles. It seems like the sword one is more of a kind of the sword-oriented one, and then you have the one with the kind of split blade looking thing that's kind of like your gunner, and then you have the other one that's kind of like a mage type kind of thing that's supposed to buff the other characters and whatnot. So you're going to be controlling them. These are called your 𝙎𝙪, and we don't have too much on the story, but we do know that there's something called the Mater or the Mater. I'm not quite sure how that's pronounced. But anyway, she's kind of some sort of deity or something of that sort. And she is able to use her sanguis, or her blood, to create these 𝙎𝙪, and then they must fight the forces of stasis. So, they are the forces of life, blood and growth and that sort of thing. And then the others are the forces of stasis, death, stagnation, not moving, that sort of thing. Also, similar to Othercide, when your 𝙎𝙪 die, your Mater or Mater can resurrect them, bring them back. And also similar is when you go in, you're going to have a map, and there's going to be different kind of nodes all over the map, and you can choose which ones you want to do. So each one's going to be its own little mission. When you go in there, you're going to be able to get some experience and whatnot. When your characters level up, what you're going to do is they're going to give you 3 options, and you can choose which option you want. So you're kind of customizing them as you go, selecting which abilities or which kind of passives. So you're building them up, and then, you know, you can eventually go on to the boss fight. Or if you wanted to, you could just go straight to the boss fight from the beginning and skip all those little levels if you wanted to. So kind of like an Othercide, where you could either just do these side missions, or you could directly challenge the boss of that area, whether you wanted to or not. So that's really cool that they're including that. And they're including all the kind of customization where each one is different and it is kind of randomized. So, as you know, every time you play through, it might change up a little bit. You might not have the same sets of abilities. You might have the same sets of abilities. You might have some, but not others. So that's really, really cool. Also, like Othercide, though, enemies kind of announce what they're going to do. So a big part of what I really enjoyed about Othercide was that when you play a game like, say, Final Fantasy Tactics or 𝙎𝙪𝙥𝙦 or whatever, there's some sort of internal AI running the units, and sometimes they have certain patterns that you can kind of figure out what they're probably going to do, but there is some randomization. In Othercide and in this, there is no real randomization of what enemies are going to do. If you hover over an enemy, it'll tell you exactly what they're going to do next. Like they'll say, like, will attack the closest unit, or is going to prioritize the unit with the lowest health, or, you know, that sort of thing. It's basically going to tell you what they are planning to do on their next move. And that's really important because this, in a way, is kind of like a puzzle game where what you're trying to do is take control over a time meter at the top. So when you use your abilities, it'll set you back on the time meter, and then it just kind of slides forward, and whoever is, you know, furthest along, they're going to be the next unit to act. So you can see who's going to act, in what order they're going to act, and you're going to want to manipulate that in certain ways. Like maybe you can do a bigger attack now, but it'll push you further down the line. Maybe you can do something to them that pushes them further away, allowing one of your characters to attack before them instead of after them, that sort of thing. So in that way, that's what I really liked about it. Was when I first went into it, I was thinking it was just going to be like another strategy kind of RPG thing, but it really is kind of a puzzle, because what you can do is you can see exactly what every single unit's going to do, and you can plan ahead and think like, okay, if I do this, it'll push that guy back, which will make it that my next unit gets the next attack, and then they can attack him. But if I do that, then this other unit over here, he's going to attack me, and I'm going to take some damage. So instead, what I might do is I might want to push him back, but not use the ability that pushes it back on the timeline, just move him further away. So when he runs at me, he wastes his turn because he can't reach me. So it's really fun. I really enjoyed my time with Othercide, and I'm really looking forward to 𝙎𝙪𝙥𝙦. So if you get the chance, go to Steam, wishlist it, sign up for the open playtest. We know it's coming soon. That's what it says, but we don't have an exact date yet. And it is currently slated for Steam, not for console or anything, but I would not be surprised if it does eventually come to console, because Othercide did as well. So looking forward to 𝙎𝙪𝙥𝙧.
I guess the only question I have for you, will you wait for it to come out on console, or you just play it on Steam?
I will probably wait a little bit for it to come on console, and if like maybe I wait a couple months, and then if it gets announced for console, then I'll wait for console. And if it's, you know, if I wait like, I don't know, 6 months, I don't know how long, but if I wait a certain amount of time, it's not coming to console, then I'll just get it on Steam eventually. Yeah.
Okay, very cool.
Because yeah, I'm really excited to play this game, but at the same time, I do have other games that I'm excited for, so it can wait until it comes to my preferred platform. So, yeah.
Sounds good. What's next?
So next, we are on to Carmageddon Rogue Shift was announced at the PC Gamer event. I don't know really what they called it. They had like a long video, and they had a bunch of trailers in it. So anyway, Carmageddon has not been around for a really long time. I mean, we had the old one, I think, what was it, like 90s or something like that, if I believe, or early 2000s. And it was a very different game. I mean, there's lots of games like this where you can just get, you know, your car out there and you just drive around and slaughter. To an extent, Twisted Metal. To an extent, GTA, you know, Crazy Taxi, all those things. But Carmageddon was very different in a lot of ways, in that it really leaned into doing things that you probably shouldn't be doing. Like, you're actually rewarded for running people down because it would give you more time on certain races. So it was very different. But now it's been gone for forever. And now we have Carmageddon Rogue Shift was just announced. So this is a little bit different from the original, but if you've played the original, you're going to fully understand what's going on. You're not going to be, oh, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong video here. You're not going to be confused as to what's going on. Basically, in this world, there's a World War III happens. They fed people a bunch of these kind of meals ready to eat or whatever, and then from that, people started mutating, and so they turned into these zombies. So now the whole world lives in these big mega cities. Everybody lives in these big skyscrapers. At night, they bunker down, or I guess bunker up, because they're in skyscrapers. And these zombie creature mutations roam the streets. That is unless you enter into Carmageddon, which is a race for reasons, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, you can race through these city streets and destroy, so now you're not running over innocent civilians. Now you are running over zombies. It's a little bit different, but basically the idea is totally the same. So it is a race, and it's actually really interesting because they say in the campaign mode, it actually is a bit of a rogue light. So what's going to happen is you're going to enter into a campaign or whatever, and they're going to give you a graph, which I guess is a section of the city. It's going to be randomly generated. So all the streets and the routes and everything are going to be different every single time. And you kind of have to plan your route through this section of the city, because you need to defeat the boss of the city in order to win that area and then move on to the next one. And so you do need to strategically plan your route. It does say that there's going to be like different shops and stuff that are kind of like safe havens where you can also upgrade your car and whatnot. So you have to plan like, okay, if I drive this way, I can drive from here to get to this shop. And then from this shop, I can drive here to get to the next shop and then work my way through the city. So it is a race, but at the same time, you're kind of planning. There's no set route through it, and you're kind of planning how can I get from point A to point B and be able to reach these safe spaces. If you do die, somebody else takes your place. Of course, you, the character, are this new guy, but basically a new person enters the race. They are going to have 15 upgradable vehicles that you can choose from. They're going to be across forward-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, all-wheel drive. There's 13 weapon classes, such as shotguns and railguns and everything in between. 80 plus perks, which you can combine to create synergies on your cars. There's going to be dynamic weather that's going to affect driving. Like if it's foggy, you can't see very far. If it's rainy, it's going to be super slippery. They also have a day-night cycle, so that factors in with these little zombie things because they're going to come out in large numbers at night and be far less frequent during the day. Cars are also going to be having visual damage, so as you go through and you get banged up, your doors are going to fall off, bumpers are going to be dragging, that sort of thing. And it also has elite and boss events. So as I said, you're going to want to take out the boss in a certain part of the city to gain control over that part of the city and move on to the next one. You're going to have these giant war rig kind of things, like if you've seen Mad Max, Fury Road. They have corrupted enforcers, which are basically police that run around and try to take you down. And you also have these zombie hordes, which you do need to be careful of because in small numbers, you're just going to smash right through them. But in large numbers, they can kind of gunk up your car and slow you down. And they of course, are going to have different kinds of mutations. So you have ones that are more, ranged focused. You're going to have these little weak ones. You're going to have these big monstrous ones. So that's pretty cool. This game is made by 34 Big Things. They are the makers of Redout and Redout 2. If you don't know what that is, it's like a really fast-paced racing game, kind of like F-Zero or Wipeout. So they do have experience in kind of this racing genre, which is really cool. So at least the racing aspects should be good. So this looks very promising. So once again, Carmageddon Rogue Shift, no release date yet. It just got announced, but it is coming to everything: PS5, Xbox X and S, Switch 2, and PC. So no matter where you are, you're going to be able to game on it, except mobile.
This was really cool. I have not even watched the trailer, and I'll probably only watch it while I'm editing the video. But yeah, I've tried to play, I think probably most recently I tried to play a Need for Speed game, and I think like a lot of people in the early 2000s, 2010-ish, we were like, oh my God, Fast and Furious is awesome. I love Need for Speed. That was the way I got into racing games. I think I played a game way back in the late 80s, early 90s, a game called Death Track, which I thought was really cool. Very similar to the TV show Twisted Metal on one of the American streaming channels, which I cannot think of the name right now.
Named after
But
the game Twisted Metal.
oh yes. So and I like the idea of Carmageddon, but at the same time, as I'm getting older, I worry about buying a game and then just not liking it, especially if I've not played something in that genre in a very long time. And that's very true for me. Like I did play a Need for Speed that has been sitting in my Steam catalog, and I'm like, okay, this is cool, but I don't know if I want to keep playing this anymore. And I love it. I played a bunch of Need for Speeds, at least 5. I mean, and maybe this is another question. Maybe Adam has a take on this. Like, I don't think I've seen like a hugely popular racing game in forever. I think the last one I think I talked about was Beam.ng way back, maybe like a year ago, 2 years ago on the show. And again, it was one of those games that was high up on the Steam charts, and that's how I found it. And it was just like a realistic gaming simulator, that sort of stuff. But then again, like compared to the games that are continuously sit in the top 100 on Steam, I mean, driving games are 2 out of 100, 3 out of 100 max. I'm not looking at it right now, but I'm pretty sure after looking at this data all the time to prepare for the show that, yeah, the racing genre is not there, and I don't know if Carmageddon is gonna make a difference.
Yeah, I don't know. I have never been a huge racing fan. I played a lot of racing games like back in like the Sega Genesis era. You know, we played Road Rash, and early PlayStation we played Twisted Metal, and I really liked Rage Racer. I really enjoyed that one, which is an offshoot of Ridge Racer. But yeah, I've never been a huge racing fan. I know Forza and Gran Turismo have always been popular. So, and then what was it? There's like there have been a bunch of racing games that have kind of come and gone. Need for Speed and The Crew and all those. So I mean, there's always a niche. So I think that there always are these kind of racing games, but I think they've kind of fallen out of like the most popular genres. I think they're not as big right now as games like battle royales and now extraction shooters are having their time in the sun. So not quite that level, but yeah, I don't know. This one, I mean, it's banking a lot on nostalgia, and this one too is very different than those other racing games that are purely simulation. This one's more of an arcade racer. Haven't really had too many of those. It's going to kind of appeal to people. You know, we haven't had a good Twisted Metal game in a really long time. I see people all the time online being like, we need a new Twisted Metal. Twisted Metal was great. And I think they tried once and it didn't really work out very well. But I think this one's going to be scratching an itch that we didn't even know we had, you know? So I could see this one being fairly popular. I don't know if it's going to, you know, reignite the genre or anything like that, but I think it'll do well. Yeah.
Let's wait and see. And then what's next, sir?
All right, so moving on. I might as well do Soul Shogunate because that was the video that I was showing before by accident when I was talking about Carmageddon. All right, so yeah, they released this trailer at, again, the PC Gamer show thing. And I don't know, when I first saw it, I was kind of like, this just looks like Stellar Blade we have at home. Let's be honest. This looks like Japan aping, you know, Korea here. But then when I looked into it, you know, it looks like it does have its own thing going on. So now I will say, I don't think the trailer necessarily did it the best justice. That is very gray. They are on the moon, but yeah, everything is just kind of this slab gray or black or slightly white, you know, off-white or whatever. But anyway, this is an action-oriented cyberpunk romp on the moon. And you're going to be playing as Yuzuki, who is the heir to a samurai clan that was destroyed by a rival clan, which therefore makes her a Ronin. So now she's trying to get revenge on that rival clan. And what I think is not shown in the trailer, because when you see the trailer, you're seeing like, okay, it's got this kind of cyberpunkish aesthetic. You know, it's these sleek character models. You're playing as this femme fatale sort of thing. You know, so it does look very Stellar Blade. But looking at the description of it, it looks like this is actually kind of more of a potentially kind of like a historical drama set in a futuristic setting, which is kind of interesting. So basically, you're going to be moving through various cities on the moon, and you're going to be using space elevators and bullet trains. You're going to be exploring the underbelly of these cities. So you have the samurai class that are at the top ruling over them, and then you're going to be seeing like the low-level people that are, you know, the ones that are making these cities function, because obviously living on the moon cannot be an easy task. And I'm wondering if that's going to draw some... if that's going to make Yuzuki kind of question herself, because she is from this samurai class. So seeing, you know, being cast down and then seeing what people under life, I'm wondering if there's going to be some self-reflection there. But it's kind of interesting because they say that each city is actually an homage to a different era in Japan's history. So you're going to have, you know, one city might be like the Shokugawa era, and another city is going to be a different era. So it's kind of interesting that as you move through these different cities, thematically, you're going to be like moving through Japanese history. And that to me is kind of an interesting spin on it, an interesting take, where that, and that's where I kind of get this idea that maybe this could be like a historical drama in a cyberpunk skin. So that to me is kind of compelling. Also, there's going to be multiple weapon types. That's different than what we saw in Stellar Blade. You know, so you're going to have not just a sword. There's going to be a whole bunch of different ones. And you're going to be able to customize your build. So you have various gadgets like your jetpack and grappling cables, but you're also going to be able to collect gene splices. So you're going to be able to customize yourself, you know, bioceramic skin or enhanced vision, that sort of thing. You're also going to have, you can kind of attribute different elements to your weapons. So maybe if you want, I don't know, like maybe an electric blade or a flame blade or that sort of thing. So you're going to be able to change things up that way. Whereas, comparing it to Stellar Blade was a little more rigid in what you could do. You could unlock things on a node, and you could, you know, you could customize yourself with the modules and whatnot. But you know, basically you had one skill set and you were moving through that. Whereas this seems like you're going to be jumping between different skill sets, and you can kind of customize which one you want to go into, which is a little bit closer to Ghost of 𝙎𝙬 in a way. And it does say that they're going to have multi-phase boss fights. So there's going to be a challenging you to identify and exploit weakness. Doesn't say anything about a parry system, so I don't know if this is going to be another kind of parry system style game or not. It might not be, which is kind of interesting because they didn't mention that. So I wonder. I was kind of curious as to like, did they just not think to, or is this actually going to be different? You know, is this going to be kind of going back to an older style of action-oriented game where parry wasn't the main focus? I don't know. They also specifically mentioned that it's going to have dynamic music that's going to evolve as battles intensify. So that's very similar to Nier Automata, where as you're going through, you can walk through a zone, and as things are changing, the music is actually built in layers, and they'll add layers or take off layers. That's really, really cool. It also said that they're working in collaboration with some Japanese artists. If you watch the trailer, they come in with this kind of rock ballad thing at the back of it, in the back half. So they are going to be working with some major artists in Japan for the music, so that's kind of interesting. But yeah, Chaos Industries is a new they're a new developer. They were founded in 2023. They do say that they are made of industry veterans from various other groups like Blizzard and whatnot, but this is going to be their first game as a team. So yeah, that's always for me, you know, is this, I always look, does this team, have they made other games? Because what kind of games have they made? Maybe I can kind of compare that. Or if it's a new one, you know, who knows, but we're going to have to wait and see. So I'm not quite sold on it just yet. Like I said, the trailer does make it look a bit drab. I would like to see a little bit more color and a little more going on. I mean, one of the things that they chose is to show and feature heavily was her flying across the moon, and then later her running across the moon on a robotic horse. And it's just the moon. It's just like a flat open horizon. So not the best angle to be showing off, you know, your visual fidelity when it's just like a flat surface and somebody running across an endless flat surface. But reading about it did catch my interest, so I am going to keep my eye on it. Soul Shogunate, no release date yet, coming to PC and PS5.
Sounds really interesting, and I think after watching you play Stellar Blade, like there's definitely an appetite for this kind of game, and we can sort of tell you on the YouTube analytics. And I was just sort of started talking about this at the beginning before we started the show today. Was just like the last video Adam did about Shift Up, and even the thumbnail I did, I was like, okay, here's Project Spirits, here's Shift Up's logo, combine. Didn't put any text on the thumbnail, right? And that would usually indicate like a CTR, but like looking at this last month's sort of like impressions and where are we getting our subscribers from, was like, holy mother, like that is the #1 video by a lot in a long time for this year, like only behind Adam's. Is it more than 1 year already since the original Stellar Blade video, right?
That's been a couple of years, I think. Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, like, that's, I would even argue that is probably the best second to best long form video we've ever had. And then it's just connected to Stellar Blade, and people are looking for it. People want more Stellar Blade like content. And maybe that's something to dive into a bit of in another video. I just remembered I need to redo your Mother Sphere video, given all the, and I wouldn't say redo, but like rework it into the mix, given how much traffic is being searched for it. So I just need to figure out how to do that. But yeah, no, looks cool. I would like to see more and more gameplay, and definitely more color, because I think I've seen this, I think, and maybe even with like, is it Doll's Nest?
Doll's Nest didn't have a lot of color either.
Yeah. Like Doll's Nest, I loved the idea, and I loved, and if you guys go back and watch some of our old live shows, or even go check out Adam's, review and 3x for Doll's Nest, like the passion is there. Adam enjoyed the game, but I think you could have, Doll's Nest's potential audience could have expanded with a bit more color.
Yeah, that's the thing is, like looking at the trailer, I mean, they do have like, okay, this area is yellow, this area is green, this area is red, this area is gray, but it's usually like there's just one dominant color in an area. It's not very dynamic. But yeah, I mean, it looks like it has like, to be honest, when I first saw the trailer for Project Eve, I was kind of like, oh, okay, whatever. I didn't even have my eye on it, and then it wasn't until later that I was kind of like, oh, okay, I'm paying attention. And then I don't remember which trailer it was, but then they showed one trailer and I was like, oh no, wait, I'm 100% on board with this. So this is just their first trailer. They don't have a release date yet, so it is still very early. So I've learned my lesson from Stellar Blade to not base things on the first trailer. So this one, it has my attention, or I should say, I'll keep my eye on it. It doesn't have my attention in the sense that I'm like, this is more of like, okay, I'll keep this one in the back of my mind, and I'll wait to see other trailers. But it does look like it does have the potential to be the next kind of that sort of action-oriented, not so, just like, hey, let's just run through and slash down a bunch of robots, just kind of good old-fashioned fun. So it does have the potential for that. So I will be keeping my eye on this one.
Perfect. And round us up today with Godslayer, which is what I'm super interested in, because there's a really horrible mobile Avatar game, just like another clone of Clash of the Clans. Again, another advert I saw. I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then I clicked in the ad. I'm like, oh no, this is just like Clash of the Clans. I'm like, nope. I've already made the commitment to not play any more free-to-play, highly monetized, predatory games. And I've been keeping with it, and I've enjoyed it, actually. There's so many cool games on iOS. I wish there were more on Android, but we'll talk about that later. But tell us about Godslayer.
Yeah, so this is kind of an interesting thing. Godslayer, this is Wuxia steampunk that people are comparing to Avatar: The Last Airbender. It is a little bit different. We'll get into that in a second. But anyway, the setup is that this is a world where there are these things called the Celestials, and they've created all living things. And basically the reason that they created all living things was so that they could put chi in them. And then as they grew and lived throughout their lives, they generate more chi. And then when they die, that chi is returned to the celestial realm, making the Celestials basically gods, because now they're immortal. So, humanity is basically cattle for the gods. That is, until humans figure out how to harness the power of chi themselves, and now they are able to utilize it. And these people are known as Elementers. They can control the elements, but it's a little bit different than Avatar, because Avatar uses the classical Greek elements, earth, wind, fire, and water. These Elementers are using the classical Chinese elements of fire, water, earth, metal, and wood. So not exactly the same. There's no air this time. But anyway, these Elementers start using their own chi. The gods get mad. They basically smash the largest kingdom on the planet, which is the 𝙎𝙪 kingdom. And so this game takes place in this after what's called the Godfall, when they come down and basically put humanity in their place. And they've said, you know what, we're going to stick it to these gods and we're going to teach them that they can't do that to us. So yeah, it's got that whole Avatar controlling the elements thing. If you watch the trailer, you can see they like the guy, his name is Chung, and he like takes some shingles on a roof and like slides them off, you know, kind of earthbender style. And he does some like kind of launching himself through the air and doing these kind of like falling kick things, like what a firebender would do. You know, his foot's on fire and causes these explosions. There's a really cool part where he's fighting this really, really big dude. This guy's huge, and he kind of uses like kind of like a flamethrower looking thing, sets the guy on fire. Guy starts panicking, jumps on top of the guy, shoves his hand into the guy's helmet, and then blows up inside the helmet with fire. Which is pretty brutal, but it was very cinematic. It looked really cool. And then this guy has this giant hammer, and of course, because, you know, metal being one of the Chinese elements he can manipulate, then he can pick up that hammer and just slam it around. So it's really looks really, really good. I am a little bit skeptical though, because when they did show the trailer, one of the first things I noticed was the prompts were PlayStation prompts, and I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of interesting. Usually they would show like A or Z or something like that. So to choose to show the PlayStation prompts at a PC gaming show was a bit unique to me. You don't usually see that, but it is coming to various consoles, so don't worry about that. But it looked like as he was going through, there were very select objects that he could manipulate. You can't just manipulate anything. There are only specific things in the environment that can be manipulated. So I'm not quite sure how much freedom you're really going to have. I am curious to see that. You know, can you really just do anything and is like everything in the environment interactable? Or is it more like, oh, you know, like in a typical game where you might have some explosive barrels, but in this case, the explosive barrel is a barrel of water and the other one's a giant chunk of metal or something like that. So kind of curious to see that. Now, they do say that these elements are going to be interacting dynamically. For instance, if there's something that's made of wood, you can set it on fire. If there's a fire, you can put it out with water. If there's water, you can use fire to boil the water and turn it into steam. So that's really cool. I'm really looking forward to seeing how you can play around with that and experiment with that. There's also going to be various factions throughout this city. So for instance, you know, after the gods came through and basically smashed the city, there are still people in the upper class who are loyal to the gods and they have great lives. And then you have the little people that toil at the bottom, because this is a steampunk world and you need a lot of workers to keep steampunk working. So there is going to be, you know, some class dynamics there. It does say that you're going to have to kind of build connections with these different groups, you know, so you might have to befriend a gang over here, which is going to affect your relationship with a gang over there. And you're going to have to, like, you know, you do something for somebody, and then later on, you're going to have to cash in those favors and be like, hey, I did this for you, you do it for me, or, you know, hey, I need this, I'll do this for you in return. It even says bribery is a way to get around. So maybe if you want to, you know, if you're like, I don't feel like stealthing it, I'll just pay the guard. So that's kind of interesting. I like that as an idea. That is a very interesting way to do it. So surprisingly, this is actually made by, hopefully I'm pronouncing it right, Pathia Games. Those are the guys that make My Time at Porsche and My Time at Sandrock, which are very, very different. And they do have some other games too, but nothing like this. So always interesting to see a studio that has been established in a certain genre and is pretty well known for doing really well in that genre and branching out and being like, I'm going to try something completely different. Can they pull it off? We know that they're skilled. We know that they know what they're doing, you know, but they're going to try something different. So, you know, will they be able to pull it off? I certainly hope so. It looks really good. But we'll see when this comes to PC, PS5, Xbox Series X. So unfortunately, Nintendo Switch, not looking like it'll be coming for you, or mobile. But if you're on PS5, Xbox, or PC, no problem. Check it out. It is the God Slayer. The God Slayer.
I know. I think when you were talking about this before the show, I'm like downloading, you know, some B-roll. I'm like, okay, cool, Pathia. I'm like, oh my god, yes. And this sounds really cool. Like this is sort of like, and this is the way I imagine it. I don't know if this is true or not. It was like, hey, and I talked about this when I talked about the last My Time at X game, which is My Time at Evershine, and how they went from My Time at Sandrock, 100 and something thousand, to My Time at Porsche, 100 and something thousand. My Time at Sandrock was about $500,000 raised in a Kickstarter. Then My Time at Evershine, over $1 million raised in a show. I think $1.3 million. And all the games have sold really well. You know, farming, survival. I wouldn't say less survival. Farming, crafting games, hugely popular right now. I think this is a niche that's gonna disappear. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, these guys at Bethia out based in mainland China somewhere. I think they're in the north somewhere. Basically, like, okay, we've made all this money. Now let's do a passion project, and I think this is what it is.
Yeah.
And these guys are really good as well in the sense of like, I can tell you from the Kickstarter emails on My Time at Evershine, they're developing a rather unique sort of dialogue system. Like all the My Time games have had dialogue, but they're all like, okay, you choose a choice and the story continues. And this time it's going to have more of like a, hey, you choose a choice and here's the impact of that choice. But they sent us an email probably about a month ago, a month and a half ago, to say, hey, we're working on the system, but it's not working the way we liked. We think we're going to not release this system in the latest alpha build, and we'll hope to get to it soon, or we'll figure out a way to get it to work. And I think that's really cool. And maybe that bodes well for Godslayer, like if they do release it in early access. That being said, like where wins it meet, man? Like the game's now overwhelmingly positive on Steam. Like, and I've seen a bunch of shorts echoed from different people, not even huge YouTubers, but even small YouTubers like us. We're like, man, this is the equivalent of a $70 video game for free. And coming from Godslayer is like, if they're not going to do this as a free-to-play game, I mean, they could still make money. Like Wukong made a bunch of money, of course, but like, how do you get people to pay that premium price potentially in 2026, 2027, I guess?
I don't know. I mean, it's still a market. People sell games all the time.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I think, yeah, I don't know, with Genshin Impact and all these other sort of Chinese games, it's like when you're competing against the free stuff, is like, yeah, what is the? I mean, it's a cool theme. Don't get me wrong, love it. Anyone who's watched the Avatar Last Airbender, huge community there, they're gonna love it. Maybe that's enough.
Yeah, I don't know. I think because I mean they didn't mention pricing or anything like that, so who knows? It could be in theory free to play. I kind of have the impression it's not because it seems to be a single character driven narrative. You know, you have a main character. There's no mention of using multiple characters. It's not build your own character. So in that sense, it's kind of like, yeah, I feel like it does feel like kind of more of your traditional, you play it once, it's done, not a live service kind of thing. It is just a one-off narrative style game. So I think there's definitely a market still for that. Yeah. I mean, granted, like you said, this is a Chinese-made game, and that's different from that market. You know, that market typically does more of the free to play, but like you said, Wukong did really well. If this one gets enough advertising in there, I'm sure people will be more than happy to play it. And like I said, it is kind of like, I think people can rationalize it fairly easily, because if you're like, okay, this is a free to play game, it's a live service, it's going to be going on for years and years and years. I'll spend $5 here, $5 there, whatever. And then you have these one-off games, and you're like, okay, well, I have to pay up front, but then there's nothing in the future. I just know that I pay and then I play it, and then I think that's a little bit easier to rationalize there than a game where you're like, oh, I'm gonna pay and then I'm gonna have to pay for more stuff down the line. That's a harder sell.
No, totally, and especially like, yeah, like we might be playing Where Winds Meet at some point, given how popular the game is.
I'm open to it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm open to it as well. Like, because I remember when it first released, the reviews were overwhelmingly negative, but it seems to have turned around quite a bit after checking it out. But it's definitely an interesting move from Pythia, and I'm looking forward to see what happens next year. Maybe they do a Kickstarter, and if they do a Kickstarter, I'd give them money because I mean all the games, my time games have been phenomenal, and I'd love to be like an Avatar sort of player. I mean that's the dream. Like there was a freaking Avatar game, Avatar Korra game, released by Platinum Games on Steam. That, speaking of games you don't own, is no longer in my Steam collection because the rights were sold to Netflix, and I don't have access, and I didn't even get a chance to play the game. I played it once when it came out. That was it, and then now it's gone from my Steam collection.
Wait, but you paid
I mean,
for
this
it?
also, huh?
You paid for it?
Yeah. I bought it when it came out from Platinum Games. Avatar: The Legend of Korra, and
This
Steam
is why
removed
people
it.
hate digital.
Yeah. And yeah, and I mean, this also makes me interested as well, talking about Netflix. With the news this morning, Paramount is like, yes, we're gonna do a hostile takeover of Warner Brothers. But I'm beyond that, is like Netflix has the rights to Avatar right now, right? They're making the TV show, another season of the TV show, 2 or 3 more seasons of the TV show probably, plus another cartoon season of the TV show. So like, how will Netflix feel about this game, which leans heavily on the Avatar stuff, using Chinese elements for sure, but I mean the inspiration is clearly from Avatar: The Last Airbender.
I mean, story-wise, it's very different. Aesthetically, it's kind of similar, but I mean that's less because they're taking influence from Avatar, and more because they and Avatar are taking influence from, or taking inspiration from, classical Asian architecture and what. So yeah, I think I think it'd be really hard to say definitively this is copying Avatar. I mean, because also people using elements for magic is not a new concept.
No, it's not at all. And I mean, thinking about Pythia as well, and some of the games that they've done, like they've definitely, I've never seen on the Steam forums or the Kickstarter forums where people will be like, oh my God, you guys are copying Stardew Valley, or you're copying Harvest Moon or something like that. Like not a single comment in that line. I mean, this also might be just the sort of farming sim game community where they don't really say that kind of stuff. So I'm sure Pythia has lawyers out in the mainland who are like, yep, we're safe, make the game, go ahead.
Yeah, and I like what you said about you make a lot of money on these games, and then you're kind of like, in the back of your mind, you always had this one thing you've always wanted to do, but you were like, I just don't have the funding, or I don't have the people, or whatever, and then suddenly you find yourself like, oh, I found success in life with this other thing, and now I can I can make that dream a reality. So I this does feel like that kind of passion project, like you said. Not that they weren't passionate about their previous games, but it does feel like this was probably something that was kind of like in the back of somebody's mind, and they were like, that would be so cool, I really want this game. But I don't feel like I could do it justice, so I'm going to do something else that I feel is a little more approachable. But now that I have the resources to do it, I can finally make my dream a reality. It does feel like that, yeah.
I mean, that sort of reminds me of Naughty Dog and the Heretic something.
Oh,
What is
Heretic
it?
Prophet.
Yes, that is the game, like a total departure from this, not the style, but like the sphere of kind of game that they've done before. Like this must have been something bubbling around in the team's head for a long time. Like, oh my God, we finally get to make it. Let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, Ghost of Tsushima is probably similar. They
Yes.
Sucker Punch had been doing the infamous like superhero style games, and they were probably like, we want to do like a classical, like, Akira Kurosawa style samurai narrative. That would be awesome. And they did Ghost of Tsushima, and they were like, yeah. So I think it's always fun to see a studio have the opportunity to kind of live up to their dreams, yeah, or have a vision that's different from what they've been doing. They're like, I've always wanted to try it. Let's see what happens. Yeah, it's always exciting.
Very much so. And moving on to the final portion of today, Adam, tell me about a tiny design choice in a game that secretly decides if you keep playing or quit it. And Adam made the really good point that he never quits a game, unlike me, which I've done numerous times in the last 10 years or so, recently anyway. But yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't quit games very often. I mean, probably the closest is in a live service style game where I will play the game up to whatever is currently content, and then I'll go off and do something else, and I just never come back. That's probably the closest that I have to quitting a game, you know. So I've done that with like Genshin Impact, Zenless Zone Zero, Destiny. But for me, especially with something like, say, Destiny, the reason I don't come back is, for a lot of it, is just I don't like bullet spongy things, especially where they rotate between phases, where it's like, oh, okay, you know, he's blocking his face, now you got to shoot him in the stomach, and then he's blocking his stomach, and now you got to shoot him in the face, and then he's blocking his face, and it just takes forever. I tend to like dynamic enemies that, you know, you either have to read or figure it out like a puzzle, but it's constantly changing. You're constantly like thinking about it. You don't just zone out. I don't mind zoning out, but I don't want to do it for like an extended period of time. You know, Shadow of the Colossus is perfect because all those bosses are basically a puzzle. You figure out how to get them, and then once you get them, you're done. You know, you don't have to just keep doing the same thing, because when it becomes bullet spongy, that to me just reminds me of that definition of insanity. What is it, like doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results? That's what bullet spongy enemies feel like to me. It's just keep shooting him and eventually he'll die, and it's just like,
I mean, I've got to disagree with you there. I mean, not all of it, but just like some parts of it, I'm like, I want, like, Hans and we started playing Soulframe, and Soulframe is great because it is so different from like the difficulty. We were playing Grounded together, and we got to a part of Grounded, we're like, oh my god, like fighting enemies takes so much time. It's so difficult, and you have to jump to this part of the landscape, and that's the way you can sort of safely attack these enemies. And it's just like, you're playing Soulframe, like, oh, okay, I'm level 10, this guy's level 14, no problem. Okay, it still requires a little bit of thinking, but it's like very relaxing, very cool. And I don't want to do difficult boss fights anymore. Not post 40. Like I don't want to read boss phases and that sort of stuff. Like, and we talked about this a little bit last night. Like he's playing Elden Ring Night Rain with a friend, and it's like, okay, it's cool to play with a friend. I've never played this on my own. And I'm saying this as a person who loves Hades, and I loved Hades 2, which I want to go back to at some point. But I think like boss fights are a little bit overdone. And I understand why studios do it, because there's a huge demand for this sort of difficulty in games from the modern gaming diaspora.
yeah, for me it's like if I'm fighting, like if I'm in a game and I'm fighting like a dragon, you know, and it's like, okay, the dragon takes off, I have to use the arrows to ground the dragon. Once I've done that, I want him to stay grounded, and then, you know, you have to do something else, like trip him up or whatever. And then once he does that, I don't like it where it's like, okay, you shoot the dragon gets grounded, you climb on the dragon, you stab him in the heart, he goes, rah, and then he flies up in the air again. And then I have to shoot the dragon, get him down on the ground, stab him in the heart, he goes, rah, and then he flies up in the air again. And then I have to shoot him down, get him, you know, and I'm just like it just feels artificially padded for me if you're doing that, because I feel like, you know, you could have made this like in Shadow of Colossus. It's like, okay, you stab it in the arm. You don't have to stab it in the arm again. That's taken care of. You have to move on to the next thing. So I like it when things are more like that, where it's like, okay, you know, you got to figure out what to do to take them out. Or if it is that kind of thing, like, you know, for instance, in the Horizon series, Horizon Zero Dawn, Horizon Forbidden West, the enemies, they have a lot of armor, but you feel like you're constantly doing something, like you're constantly like blowing up his shoulder, or blowing up the fire sac on the stomach that causes it to catch on fire. You know, there's always, you're not doing the same, you know, you're not shooting at that same shoulder 1,000 times. You know, you shoot in that shoulder until it's taken out. Then you have to shoot the other shoulder, and then you shoot the stomach or whatever. So I feel like I want to feel like I'm doing something rather than just like, that didn't work, let me try it again. You know, like, and then I know I need to do it 5 times. Yeah, that for me is just kind of like, you couldn't have thought of 5 different things to do. You just maybe do the same thing 5 times. Why don't you just make it a shorter fight? I already figured it out.
Totally agree with you there. Last question for today. Which sequels are significantly more difficult than the first title?
Yeah, so I've been playing Ghost of 𝙎𝙬, and I will say Ghost of 𝙎𝙬 is actually harder than Ghost of Tsushima for a couple reasons. For one, Ghost of Tsushima, usually when you were engaging with one enemy, they just kind of came at you one by one. So you'd have like one guy would be fighting you, and then the next guy would kind of wait for him to die and then come running in. Ghost of 𝙎𝙪𝙦, they will stab you in the back. They will mob you. So it is a lot harder because when you're dealing with this guy, you got to deal with you can't just like the other guys aren't going to be dancing around you. They're going to be stabbing you in the back. So that makes it a little bit harder. Also, I do feel like the parry windows are a little bit tighter than they were in the first one. So you do have to be a little more precise. But also just, and maybe I'm just misremembering Ghost of Tsushima, but I feel like the enemies are just generally more aggressive, like especially in the boss fights. Like for instance, a couple bosses will do like 3 red attacks in a row, and red attacks are unblockable. So you have to dodge them. And they'll just do like 1, 2, 3, but then also they do like slide across the entire arena. So it's kind of like, oh my God, like you can't get a good distance because they'll just instantly close the gap. So I feel like Ghost of 𝙎𝙪𝙦 is a little bit harder actually than Ghost of Tsushima was.
Very cool. I wasn't expecting that answer. I thought you might reflect on a previous game you had played, not the one you still kind of.
Well, the other one that came to mind was Soul Calibur, because in Soul Calibur 6, it just got to the point where it was just input reading by the end of the game. But then I was looking it up, and apparently that's been a thing for several Soul Caliburs, and I was just misremembering.
Oh my God. I mean, that is another one of those really famous PlayStation series that I played in an arcade. I'm like, one day I'm going to own a Soul Calibur game. And yeah, turning 43 in a few weeks hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I really like Soul Calibur, but I typically don't, I don't usually the fighting do. I do like the story. They usually have like a story mode kind of thing, like Libra of Souls or whatever. I typically like that part of it, so I usually focus in on that. And yeah, as you go through, you level up, and then at a certain level, it just starts input reading, and it just wasn't fun for me anymore once it reached that point. So, but yeah, I guess I was misremembering because I was like, oh yeah, that's so annoying. And then I was like, yeah, I don't think that, like, why did they start doing that? And I was looking it up, and then they were saying like, oh yeah, because in Soul Calibur 5 it did this. Oh yeah, in Soul Calibur 3 it did that. And I was like, I don't remember that, but I don't know. Maybe it's how memory works, where you forget the bad stuff and remember all the good stuff. So I guess I just forgot. Yeah.
Exactly. Very cool. So that is it for today. On some final notes, as I was just remembering. So we'll still be recording throughout the rest of this year. Stay tuned for the end of this year. We have 2 special shows with, long forms sort of being released towards the end of the year. I'm talking about some highlights and maybe lowlights of games, some hot takes and maybe not so hot takes, depending what you guys think. But yeah, that is it. Don't forget, we have a newsletter being released every week. 2nd issue was last week. 3rd issue will be released on Friday. Subscribe. It's just something else that you get into email. I'm not going to say, oh my God, you have to read it every week. It's like, yes. Did you miss the show? Cool. Well, check out some of the things that 𝙎𝙪𝙦 said in written form. There's loads of apps now, especially with AI, that you can say, hey, can you read this to me? And you can sort of do that while you're washing the dishes or something like that, because these are really short, 4 stories at most, with a little bit of tidbits at the end. But that is it. Thank you guys as always for tuning in. Thanks for the recent support and the searches and that sort of stuff. Let us know if there's anything you would want us to make a video about, and we will definitely have a look into it. And then we'll see you next week.